Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. At dawn, the hum of machines shattered the quiet of the fields. A bulldozer carved through soybeans like the land was theirs. But this farm wasn't for sale, and Declan Westbrook wasn't the type to back down. What began as trespass would ignite a war no HOA was ready for. It was early morning when I first heard it, the low, steady hum of machinery where there should have been nothing but birdsong and the occasional grunt of cows waiting for their feed. I stepped out of the barn, the air still cool from the night, coffee mug warming my hands, and squinted toward the eastern fields. And there it was. A damn bulldozer. I stood there for a second, blinking like I was seeing things. But no, it was very real. A crew of workers, at least half a dozen of them, was moving dirt in a slow curve across my soybean field. A cloud of dust hung in the air behind them. One of the trucks had Maple Hollow HOA stenciled on the side. That's when the unease in my gut hardened into something more focused. Maple Hollow, that shiny new development on the other side of the creek, barely a year old. The place with the designer mailboxes and manicured lawns where the people wouldn't know a cornstalk from a broomstick. I hopped on the ATV and drove over. The closer I got, the more pissed off I became. A wide strip of land, mine, was already scraped clean, and they were laying gravel like they owned the place. I parked right in their path and stepped off, raising my voice over the engine noise. Who the hell's in charge here? A man in a neon vest walked up, clipboard in hand, like that made him king. We've got clearance to build a community access road. Should be done by the end of the week. Through my field? I asked, slowly and clearly, like I was speaking to a golden retriever. He didn't flinch. It's part of Maple Hollow's infrastructure improvements. The board approved it. It's gonna improve access to County Route 15. Show me the paperwork, I said. He blinked. Well, the HOA has it on file. Buddy, this is private farmland, not some extra corner lot you can decorate with a sidewalk. You got 10 seconds to turn your machines around, or we're going to have a bigger issue than gravel. He gave me the kind of look you give to a man holding up traffic on a freeway. The kind of look that said, this farmer doesn't get how things work now. They didn't stop. Not that day. By the time I'd finished on the phone with the county and come back with an email from the zoning office confirming there were no permits filed for any road, those bastards had already pushed through 50 yards of gravel, and they weren't stopping. When I tried to block their path with the ATV the next day, 2 HOA board members showed up in suits and sunglasses, acting like they were negotiating a land deal in Texas. This road will benefit the entire community, one of them said with a smile so fake I thought his teeth might fall out. I asked again for the permit. It's a neighborhood improvement. We're working on formalizing it. Just a matter of time, the other one chimed in. A matter of time. By Friday, the road was done. A wide gravel line slicing through my eastern fields like a scar. I stood there, watching as the first SUVs started rolling through it. Windows down, kids screaming, dogs barking. They waved at me like I was the welcome committee. I didn't wave back. They came in waves. First, it was the morning joggers, people in neon tank tops and wireless earbuds who looked confused when I flagged them down. Then came the strollers, literal and figurative. Mothers pushing designer baby carts, nodding politely like I was the neighborhood groundskeeper. By midweek, the road through my farm had become the unofficial scenic route out of Maple Hollow. SUVs zipped past my irrigation pipes, flinging gravel like they were late for brunch. One guy honked at my tractor, honked. It didn't take long for the damage to start showing. My cows, docile creatures unless spooked, had started clustering in the far corners of their pasture, visibly agitated by the engine noise. A delivery truck barreled through so fast it kicked up a dust storm that settled over my hives. I lost 2 colonies within a day, and the bees that remained were erratic, angry. Can't blame them. I was starting to feel the same way. The final straw came when I found fast food wrappers and an empty wine cooler bottle in my field. Someone had decided my property made a fine little picnic area. I stood there holding the trash in one hand, jaw clenched so tight I thought I might crack a molar. So I did what any sane man would do. I put up signs. Bright red ones, 2-foot lettering. Private property, no trespassing. I bolted one to each side of the new road and chained up the entrance for good measure. Felt good. Felt clear. Next morning, they were gone. Not knocked over, not damaged. Just gone. Like they'd never been there. The chains had been cut, and the gate swung open. Tracks from multiple vehicles crisscrossed my field again. One set led right over a patch of early soy I'd planted in a test bed. I ran my fingers through the torn-up soil and imagined how many times I'd have to explain this to a crop insurance adjuster. I went to the county office, folder of property records under my arm. I asked them to show me any paperwork that justified this road, permits, easements, right-of-way filings, anything. They came up empty. Nothing had been submitted. Nothing was pending. One clerk even said, "They'd need your notarized consent to touch that land." No kidding. Back at the farm, I got a knock at the door. An envelope had been taped to my gate. Inside was a printed letter, Maple Hollow HOA letterhead at the top. It read like a Hallmark card written by a lawyer. As part of ongoing community development efforts, the newly added Eastern Access Road improves connectivity for all residents. We appreciate your understanding as we integrate rural assets into the broader infrastructure. Integrate rural assets, I muttered aloud, like my land was a damn Lego brick in their cul-de-sac fantasy. But it didn't stop there. That weekend, I started seeing flyers posted around town. Grocery stores, library, church bulletin board. They all said the same thing. Local farmer opposes community access road, hurts property values. Beneath that, a blurry photo of me holding the no trespassing sign, like I was the villain in a made-for-TV HOA drama. And then came Harold. My old neighbor, retired county surveyor, showed up with a folded-up map and a guilty look in his eyes. "Saw something odd last week," he said. Ran into Chuck from the road crew. Told me the HOA paid cash for a fast build, no questions asked. Said your land was a formality. A formality. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I was worried, though I should have been, but because something deeper settled in. This wasn't just a neighborly dispute. This was theft dressed up in suburban politeness. And I was just getting started. I spent the next few days making calls. County zoning, land records, legal aid. Every answer came back the same. No permit, no easement, no formal request of any kind had been submitted for that road. The county couldn't even find a record of communication from Maple Hollow HOA regarding my land, which meant everything they'd built was unauthorized, illegal, plain and simple. But they didn't care. And now that the road was open, the traffic was only getting worse. By Wednesday morning, I'd had enough. I pulled my old welding rig out of the shed, hadn't used it in years, and drove out to the eastern edge of the farm where the gravel path met the main road. I installed a heavy-duty gate across the access point, one of those thick galvanized ones made for livestock control. Then I welded the hinges shut and ran a crossbar through the frame, locking it with a reinforced padlock that looked like it belonged in Fort Knox. Before I finished, I spray-painted a fresh sign in foot-tall letters, "Private Farm Road, no access. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Then I drove to the opposite end of the gravel road, where it exited into Maple Hollow, and repeated the process. By noon, both ends were locked up tight. No way in, no way out. Just the way it should have been from the start. I sat on my porch that afternoon, waiting. I didn't have to wait long. First came the honking, impatient horns blaring from the Maple Hollow side like someone had been personally wronged by a gate on land they didn't own. Then came the HOA, 3 of them this time. Karen types, male and female, all in polos with little HOA badges clipped to their belts. You'd think they were federal agents the way they marched up my drive. "You've unlawfully blocked a community road," one of them snapped, not even bothering with hello. "This is a serious violation." I let the screen door slam behind me and walked down the porch steps. That road runs across private farmland. My farmland, built without my consent, without a permit, and without legal right. It provides essential access for Maple Hollow, another one said, lips pursed like she was chewing on a lemon. "You're interfering with community infrastructure." "Community infrastructure?" I laughed. "You mean the road you trespassed to build? We're giving you 24 hours to remove the obstruction, or we'll pursue legal remedies," the man said. I crossed my arms. "Go ahead. Make sure you spell my name right on the lawsuit." They left in a cloud of attitude and perfume, muttering into cell phones before their SUV even hit the gravel. An hour later, I got the knock I was expecting. Sheriff's deputy. Young guy. Looked uncomfortable even before he opened his mouth. "Mr. Westbrook, we got a call about you obstructing a public thoroughfare." I handed him the folder I'd prepared. Property maps, ownership documents, recent zoning letters, the whole 9 yards. He looked through them carefully, nodded slowly, then sighed. Looks like it's all in order. I can't enforce anything here. This ain't a public road. No, it ain't, I said. But it might be a crime scene before long if someone keeps cutting my chains. He gave a polite nod and headed back to his cruiser. 2 days later, I was served with a lawsuit. HOA of Maple Hollow, Declan Westbrook. They were suing me for obstruction of infrastructure, denial of public access, and my personal favorite, hostile interference with community transit functions. They actually use the phrase hostile interference. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the envelope. Well, if they wanted to go legal, I was more than ready. The first hearing was held in the county courthouse on a gray Monday morning. One of those days where the sky just sort of hangs over everything like wet wool. I wore a clean button-down and my least dirty boots. My lawyer, Sandra Gable, sharp as barbed wire and twice as patient, had already warned me, they'll come in smug. Don't rise to it. She wasn't wrong. Maple Hollow's legal team strolled into the courtroom like they were showing off a new timeshare. Matching suits, polished teeth, binders color-coded with tabs, HOA royalty in full bloom. The lead attorney, a man named Calhoun with the voice of a televangelist, rose and theatrically presented what he called a critical document of precedent. He handed copies to the judge, the clerk, and us. I took one look and felt my stomach twist. It was a photocopy of a document titled Temporary Access Easement Agreement, signed allegedly by my father, dated spring of 1997. One paragraph, one signature, a notary stamp that looked blurry even on paper. I stared at the signature. It looked close, too close, like someone had tried to mimic the little curve at the end of his W, but missed the pressure he always used on the downstroke. To most people, it would pass as genuine, but I'd seen my dad sign that name thousands of times. This one, it wasn't his. Sandra leaned in, whispering, "You sure?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My expression must have said enough. Judge Grissom raised a brow. Defense? Response? Sandra stood. Your Honor, we believe this document is fraudulent and will provide comparative signatures from verified legal filings to demonstrate that the signature was forged. Calhoun smirked. We stand by its validity. The notary is real. The document was discovered in HOA archives. Of course it was. Sandra muttered under her breath. The judge nodded slowly. I'll allow submission of counter-evidence and request handwriting analysis. Let's move forward. After the hearing, I drove straight to the credit union where my dad had kept his business accounts for over 20 years. The same lady still worked the front desk. Janice, 70-something, and twice as sharp as anyone in that courtroom. Declan Westbrook, she said, blinking. You look just like your daddy. What brings you in? Need a signature, I said. A real one. She pulled up an old loan file from '99, found 2 pages with his scrawl, bold, certain, unmistakable. I scanned them right there and emailed them to Sandra with a note. Compare these to the HOA fairy tale. Later that night, I pulled out a dusty shoebox my dad had used for personal papers, found a hospital discharge note from spring '97. Dad had been recovering from hernia surgery that entire month. He wasn't lifting shovels or signing land agreements. He was flat on his back, swearing at daytime television. But that wasn't all. I remembered a video from my old drone footage, maybe from a year or so back, saved on an old hard drive. Took me an hour to find it, tucked between irrigation maps and weather logs. When I opened it, I felt like I'd struck gold. In the video, shot from above, the eastern edge of the farm was untouched. Just rows of crops, no tire tracks, no paths. Not a single sign that anyone had ever used that space as a road. I cut a segment, zoomed in, time-stamped it, and saved it in a folder marked, for court, burn later. The cherry on top came the next morning when I stopped by Harold's place, the retired surveyor. He handed me a folded napkin with a phone number and said, kid who worked the road crew might have something to say. Name's Cody. Didn't sound too happy about how things were handled. For the first time since this mess started, I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly, but direction. They dragged my father's name into this, forged it, used it like a battering ram to push through my land. Now it was my turn. 2 days after getting that fake easement waved in my face, I brought in the big guns, hired an independent geo-survey firm out of Des Moines, expensive, precise, and unflinchingly thorough. The kind of folks who don't care if it's a Walmart or a cornfield, they measure truth in inches. They came out with drones, sensors, and equipment that looked like it belonged on Mars. Took them less than a day to map the intrusion. When the report came in, I already knew what it would say, but seeing it in black and white was still a punch in the gut. The road cut 67 meters deep into my land, not along the edge, not flirting with the fence line. No, full-blown surgical removal of acreage I planted and worked with my own damn hands. The gravel had compacted my topsoil, tore out irrigation lines, and destroyed a quarter-acre of soy already sprouting. The estimated crop loss? 89 grand. And that didn't include the overtime I'd paid trying to salvage what was left. Sandra filed the counterclaim within 24 hours. Illegal encroachment, property destruction, document fraud, and reputational harm. 4 counts, and each one sharp enough to bleed. HOA didn't take it well. The next morning, my mailbox was stuffed with a glossy community bulletin from Maple Hollow. Title: A Farmer's Refusal to Cooperate. How One Man is Holding Us Back. They'd circulated it all over town. Gas stations, diners, even the post office. It painted me like some bitter hermit trying to derail essential neighborhood progress. It even used phrases like archaic landholder and uncooperative legacy property. Legacy this, I thought. Then came the calls. Some angry, some confused. One from the local realtor association asking if my farm was under dispute and whether I was planning to vacate. Right, over my cold, dead boots. By the end of the week, I noticed something even slimier. Someone had lodged a complaint with the Environmental Division claiming I'd been dumping unprocessed manure into the creek that borders my land. I got the official notice on a Friday morning just before sunrise, stuck under my windshield wiper like a parking ticket. A fine of $10,000 pending investigation, except I didn't have any livestock near the creek. Never had. And the test results from the last county inspection conducted just 3 months prior showed zero contamination. Sandra called it a textbook case of weaponized bureaucracy. I called it chicken shit. But while HOA was busy slinging mud, I was still digging. And that number Harold gave me. It finally paid off. Cody, the young guy who'd worked the gravel crew, agreed to meet at a diner 2 towns over. Nervous kid. Kept checking the windows like someone might kick the door in and drag him back to the HOA gulag. They told us it was approved, he said. Said it was a formality. The lady from HOA, blonde one, always wearing heels, can't remember her name. She came by the job site with an envelope, handed it to my boss, said something about expediting compliance and discretion appreciated. I didn't see inside, but the way he smiled, yeah. I asked if he'd be willing to say that in court. He looked terrified. But after a long pause, he nodded. If it's a subpoena, I'll talk. Just don't mention me until you have to. On the way home, I stopped by the edge of the field, stared at that gravel stripe cutting my land in half. It didn't look like a road anymore. It looked like a wound, an open, infected wound full of arrogance and entitlement. I'd already given them more chances than they deserved. I'd played nice, tried to go through the channels. But there's a point past which you stop trying to explain your rights. You start enforcing them. That point was now behind me. No more warnings, no more diplomacy, just the long, sharp edge of consequence. Cody cracked faster than I expected. All it took was a subpoena from Sandra and a second phone call from me where I promised him 2 things. I wouldn't let his name leak early, and I'd make damn sure the people who dragged him into this mess answered for it. When he showed up to Sandra's office that Friday, he was pale as drywall and sweating through his flannel, but he brought the goods. First, he handed over a printout, photos of text messages between his supervisor and someone saved in the contacts as M.H. Board. In one, the supervisor asked, "You sure we don't need to file anything?" The response, "You'll be fine. Road's already a done deal. Just stay quick and quiet." Another said, "Payment will be delivered on site. No questions." But the real bombshell was the voice memo. Cody, being the kind of guy who likes to cover his ass, had recorded a conversation between his supervisor and the HOA president, the blonde woman with the heels now named Amanda Talcott. In the clip, you can hear Amanda saying, "We've had trouble with that farmer before. His father was stubborn too. Just get the road in and we'll deal with the paperwork later. My lawyer has a solution for that." Sandra played it twice, then once more, just to let it burn. Her smile was razor thin by the end. "This," she said, "is conspiracy. Plain and simple." That same afternoon, she submitted an emergency motion to expand our counterclaim and request a temporary injunction against any further HOA activity on or adjacent to my property. It included Cody's testimony, the texts, the memo, and a full transcript. But she wasn't done yet. We contacted the county recorder's office and requested a forensic review of all land filings in the past 2 years. Guess what turned up? A suspicious amendment to parcel boundaries, one that mysteriously linked the edge of my farm to a new easement corridor listed under Maple Hollow's community plan. It was digitally stamped, filed late at night, and, get this, signed by a clerk who'd been retired for 6 months. That's when we knew. This wasn't just about a gravel road, it was fraud. Coordinated, documented, and dumb enough to leave a trail a mile long. I drove out to Harold's place again, showed him the amendment. His face went hard. "That's not even close to a legal adjustment," he said. "No notary, no plat resurvey, no boundary hearings. It's ghost paperwork." He offered to sign an affidavit confirming the HOA never filed for any legal right-of-way through my property, even threw in his old ID badge from the county as backup. To cap it all off, Sandra got a statement from the county's deputy zoning officer, a woman named Evelyn, who'd been on the job long enough to smell something rotten through a screen. She confirmed the parcel adjustment didn't originate from her office and that no authorization had ever been issued for infrastructure work beyond the Maple Hollow development line. With everything stacked up, Sandra prepared to go to the judge with a formal petition, initiate an investigation into HOA's internal operations, and freeze all current land use changes involving them. Meanwhile, I reinforced both gates, added trail cams facing in and out, and bought a backup generator for the barn cameras, just in case someone decided to get creative. That night, I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat on the porch, watching the sun bleed into the soy fields. The road was still there, smug and silent, cutting through my land like it belonged, but now it had a shadow over it. A trail of receipts, recordings, fake documents, and lies stacked tall and teetering. Amanda Talcott might have thought this was just a bump in the asphalt, but she'd built her empire on my dirt, and I was about to pull the whole foundation out from under her. The smear campaign kicked into high gear right after Sandra filed the petition. First came the sudden surge of anonymous complaints to the county. Noise violations from farm equipment, improper storage of pesticides, even a claim that I was running an illegal repair shop out of my barn, each one more pathetic than the last. I knew damn well what they were doing. HOA wasn't winning in court, so they'd try to bury me in bureaucracy, death by 1,000 inspections. Sure enough, within a week, 2 men from environmental health pulled into my drive, flashing badges and plastic clipboards. They walked through the fields, took photos of the barn, asked me about chemical storage and manure management. I kept everything clean and up to code, but they acted like I was hiding a meth lab under the hay bales. One of them finally muttered, "Sorry, Mr. Westbrook. Orders came from upstairs. We got 4 calls in 2 days about your property. It's protocol now." Right. 2 days later, I came back from town to find someone had dumped used motor oil across the gravel entrance to the eastern gate. A greasy black smear soaking into the soil like a message. I checked the cameras, nothing but static during the exact hour it happened. Someone had jammed the signal. I filed a police report, but I knew how this would go. Vandalism on private farmland wasn't exactly high priority for the sheriff's department. Still, I gave them the footage, a copy of the complaint stack, and told them calmly that if the HOA thought this would scare me off, they were reading the wrong damn book. And then, out of nowhere, came help. A kid, barely 20, showed up at the gate one morning with a GoPro strapped to his chest and a mic clipped to his hoodie. "You Declan Westbrook?" he asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "I run a TikTok channel on land rights. Your story's blowing up." I didn't know whether to laugh or groan, but I let him in. He filmed a short clip of me standing next to the no access sign, told the story in 60 seconds, and posted it with the caption, "HOA builds illegal road, sues the farmer when he shuts it down." Within 12 hours, it had over 200,000 views. A day later, local news picked it up. The support came pouring in. Messages from farmers across the Midwest, old friends of my dad, even a few folks from Maple Hollow, quiet ones, sent me emails like, "Not everyone here is with Amanda. She's gone too far." One woman, a former HOA treasurer, left me a voicemail saying she'd been pushed out after questioning the road budget. Said Amanda had rerouted nearly 50 grand from beautification projects into discretionary logistics. Whatever that meant. Sandra took that and ran with it. She filed an addendum to our case requesting Amanda's personal financial disclosures and HOA board meeting transcripts for the last 18 months. That didn't go over well. That night, someone fired a shot through one of my barn's upper windows. No damage, no injuries, just a bullet hole and a message. I installed floodlights, reinforced the camera rig, and started sleeping with my shotgun within reach. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. The farm had been in my family for a century. My blood was in that soil. No spoiled suburban dictator with a spreadsheet and a god complex was going to scare me off. I stood at the gate the next morning and watched another SUV slow down, the driver snapping a photo of my sign. I smiled. Let them look. Let them seethe. Let them realize that no matter how many letters they send, how many rumors they spread, or how many shadows they throw at my doorstep, I'm not the one who blinks. Court day felt less like justice and more like theater. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Local reporters in the back row, residents from both the Hollow and the rest of the county peppered through the benches. I sat in my pressed shirt, boots polished just enough to not get side-eyed by the bailiff. Sandra sat beside me with that calm predator look she always wore when she knew the other side was about to walk straight into their own bear trap. Amanda Talcott arrived in full regalia. Cream-colored blazer, high heels too sharp for farm soil, and a facial expression like she was the offended party at a garden brunch gone wrong. Behind her, two of the HOA board members followed like nervous interns. Their lawyer, Calhoun, strutted in like a man who'd never been told no by anyone but his mother. Judge Grissom wasn't one for theatrics. Gray hair, thick glasses, and a voice like a tired drill sergeant. "Let's keep it brief and factual," he said before either side could posture. "No speeches, just law." Calhoun opened with confidence, presenting the so-called easement again. Claimed it was historical, implied, mutually understood by prior generations. He even threw in the phrase gentleman's agreement. Sandra stood without missing a beat. "Your Honor, Exhibit A," she said, handing over a side-by-side comparison of my father's verified signature and the forged one. This signature was fabricated. The date coincides with a known hospitalization and the notary who allegedly signed off. Deceased in 1996. That made the courtroom rustle. Then came Cody's testimony. He stepped up, voice shaking a little but steady where it mattered. He explained how the crew was instructed to build fast and ask nothing. He confirmed Amanda handed off cash and insisted that the paperwork would be taken care of quietly. Sandra played the voice memo. Amanda's voice rang through the courtroom like a ghost. "Just get the road in. We'll handle the documents later." Amanda turned white. The board members behind her suddenly became very interested in their shoelaces. Next, Sandra called Evelyn from zoning, who confirmed there was no legal request, no approved servitude, no boundary adjustment ever filed through the county. Harold's affidavit sealed the point. He explained exactly why the parcel amendment filed by HOA was fraudulent, complete with outdated formatting and a forged clerk's signature. Judge Grissom leaned back, exhaled through his nose. "So, let me get this straight," he said. "You built a road through private farmland using forged documents, unauthorized modifications, and a signature from a man recovering from surgery. Then, when the rightful owner blocked access, you sued him? No one answered." "I'm pausing all HOA civil claims pending formal review," the judge said. "Furthermore, I'm forwarding materials related to land tampering and document fraud to the district attorney's office for criminal consideration." Sandra didn't smile. She didn't need to. The silence from the HOA bench was worth more than any smirk. Outside, reporters swarmed, but I didn't say much. Just one sentence. They shouldn't have forged my father's name. No metaphor, no speech, just the truth. And truth, as it turns out, carries weight. The ruling came down on a blistering Tuesday afternoon, thick with August heat and a kind of tension that made the walls feel too small. I sat in the front row, with Sandra flipping calmly through our files, though I knew damn well she didn't need to read them. She could recite every statute, every exhibit, every inch of that stolen gravel road from memory. I'd never seen someone so methodically carve up a lie and hang it out to dry. Amanda Talcott was there too, of course. Tight-lipped, pale, dressed in charcoal gray now, like she was mourning the fantasy where she won. The rest of the HOA board had thinned out. No more smug little army, just two stragglers looking like they were ready to bolt if someone so much as sneezed. Judge Grissom didn't drag it out. "The court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Declan Westbrook on all counts. His voice was steady, firm, and merciless. The plaintiff, a Maple Hollow HOA, is found to have committed unauthorized construction on private land, submitted fraudulent documentation, and engaged in acts of deliberate misrepresentation to local authorities and this court. Amanda flinched. I didn't. The HOA is hereby ordered to compensate Mr. Westbrook for direct agricultural damages totaling $89,000, reputational harm and legal fees totaling $121,000, and punitive damages in the amount of $130,000. Sandra didn't blink, just scribbled a note on her legal pad, $340K. Paid in full or die mad about it, but it didn't stop there. The court additionally orders full removal of the illegally constructed road within 30 days. This demolition and land restoration must be completed at HOA's expense and to the satisfaction of a certified independent surveyor appointed by the county. Gasps broke out behind me. Half the courtroom hadn't believed it would go this far. Most people never see an HOA lose. Not publicly, not this big. Then came the real twist. In light of submitted evidence, this court is also referring Amanda Talcott to the Iowa Attorney General's office for investigation into felony document fraud, unlawful modification of land records, and potential conspiracy to defraud a private landowner. Amanda didn't flinch this time. She just sat there, frozen, like her body had checked out 5 minutes ago and left only the skin behind. I walked out of that courtroom into daylight that felt clearer than it had in months. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I ignored them all. My boots crunched over the gravel lot like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence I'd waited too long to finish. By week's end, Amanda was arrested. Perp walked out of her front porch in front of her shocked neighbors. A few residents from Maple Hollow sent quiet apologies. A few others deleted their Facebook posts real quick. The road demolition began a few days later. I watched from my porch with a glass of sweet tea in hand as backhoes chewed up the gravel like it was never meant to be there, because it wasn't. Some men think land is just dirt, just lines on a map, but not me, not my family. They tried to pave over our boundaries, and now they'd pay for every inch. The road was gone by the end of September, bulldozed, scooped, and hauled out in dump trucks that rattled my fence posts on the way back to wherever stolen gravel goes to die. The last bit of crushed stone was scraped up by a county-mandated crew under court supervision, and once it was done, a surveyor came out to inspect. He walked the length of the scarred path with a laser level, made some notes, then turned to me and said, "They went in deep, but you got it back." Damn right, I did. A week later, I poured the concrete footings for the new gate. Not just a fence this time, a full metal arch welded by hand in my shop. The sign hanging beneath it was made from reclaimed oak and steel letters I carved myself over 3 long evenings with a stiff drink by my side. It read, "Private Farm. No access. No excuses." And underneath, smaller and burned into the wood, "No means no." Even if you're wearing a blazer, it wasn't just for Maple Hollow. It was for anyone who ever thought that rural land, just because it looked quiet, was somehow up for grabs. That behind every weathered barn was a pushover waiting to get walked on. I wanted them to know they were wrong, loud and clear. The story didn't fade quietly. A week after Amanda's arrest, my inbox flooded with interview requests. A reporter from Des Moines called the case an unprecedented blow to HOA overreach. Local radio wanted a soundbite. Some land law blog wrote a piece titled, "The Farmer Who Welded the Line." Hell, even a college professor from Iowa State emailed me asking permission to use the lawsuit as a case study in her property law and agricultural ethics seminar. I told her sure, long as she spelled my name right. Meanwhile, Maple Hollow's board held an emergency election. New leadership swept in under promises of transparency and restoring community trust. Translation: damage control. I didn't care what they did as long as they stayed the hell off my soil. A few of the residents stopped by in the weeks that followed. Some apologized. Some just nodded from the driver's seat of their SUVs as they passed, like they were acknowledging a war they didn't sign up for but were glad someone fought. One of them, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s, brought me a peach pie and said, "For standing your ground. We should have done it sooner." I set the pie on the kitchen counter and poured myself some coffee. Boots kicked up, sunrise coming through the east window like it had for the last 40 years. Same soil, same stubborn family blood running through it. They tried to break something they didn't understand. They thought power came from clipboards and bylaws. But out here, power's quieter. It's built in sweat, welded in steel, buried in the roots of fields that remember who worked them. They brought gravel. I brought everything else.